Have you ever felt like you're sleepwalking through your own life, going through the motions, while something deep inside yearns for something more authentic, more real? You wake up each morning to the same routine, check the same notifications, rush through the same tasks, and collapse into bed feeling like another day has passed without truly living. This isn't just modern exhaustion. This is what happens when we disconnect from the natural rhythm of existence itself. Tonight, I want to share with you an ancient wisdom that can wake you up from this autopilot existence, a philosophy that has guided millions toward a more conscious, intentional way of being. The Taoists discovered something profound about human nature thousands of years ago, something that most people today have completely forgotten, and those who understand it live in a fundamentally different reality than everyone else. Taoism isn't just another philosophy to study or debate. It's a way of seeing and moving through the world that transforms how you experience every single moment. While most people fight against life, forcing outcomes and burning themselves out in the process, those who understand Taoist principles learn to flow with existence in a way that feels almost magical to outside observers. They seem to accomplish more with less effort, find peace in chaos, and navigate challenges with a grace that appears effortless. The secret lies not in doing more, but in understanding the subtle art of Wu Wei, the principle of effortless action that stands at the heart of Taoist wisdom. When you observe nature, you see Wu Wei everywhere. The river doesn't struggle to carve through rock, it simply flows persistently around and through obstacles until it naturally wears them down. The tree doesn't force its growth, it yields to the wind during storms and bends without breaking. Birds don't labor to fly, they work with air currents and gravity in perfect harmony. Yet somewhere along the way, human beings convince themselves that life should be a constant battle, that every goal requires force, that struggle equals virtue. This misconception has created a world full of people who are chronically stressed, perpetually exhausted, and secretly wondering why success feels so hollow when they finally achieve it. The first principle that awakens people from autopilot living is learning to distinguish between effort and struggle. Most people confuse the two, thinking that if something isn't difficult, they must not be trying hard enough. But Taoism teaches us that true effectiveness comes from aligned action, where you're working with the natural flow of circumstances rather than against them. This doesn't mean being passive or lazy, it means being incredibly attentive to timing, opportunity, and the subtle currents of any situation. When you start paying attention to these flows, you begin to notice that there are optimal moments for action and necessary periods for waiting, times when pushing forward serves you, and times when stepping back creates better outcomes. Think about a conversation where you're trying to convince someone of something important to you. The person operating on autopilot keeps pushing their point harder when they meet resistance, raising their voice, repeating the same arguments, creating more tension with each word. But someone who understands Taoist principles recognizes the resistance as information, not opposition. They might pause, ask questions, find common ground, or even table the discussion until emotions settle. They're not being weak or giving up. They're reading the energy of the interaction and choosing the approach most likely to create genuine understanding. This is Wu Wei in action, accomplishing your true objective through wisdom rather than force. The second awakening principle involves embracing what Taoists call yin and yang, the understanding that life moves in natural cycles that cannot be rushed or avoided. Modern culture has taught us to want constant growth, perpetual happiness, and unending productivity. We've been conditioned to see any dip in energy, mood, or progress as failure, something to immediately fix or overcome. But this fighting against natural rhythms is exactly what keeps people stuck in unconscious living. Those who understand Taoism know that productivity has seasons, that creativity requires periods of apparent emptiness, that true strength comes from knowing when to retreat and regroup. Consider how this plays out in your daily energy. Most people try to maintain the same level of intensity throughout their day, drinking coffee when they're naturally tired, forcing focus when their mind wants to rest, staying busy when their soul craves stillness. Then they wonder why they feel burnt out and disconnected from themselves. Someone living by Taoist principles pays attention to their natural rhythms and honors them. They might do their most challenging work during their peak energy hours, use their low energy times for reflection or planning, and recognize that these cycles enhance rather than hinder their overall effectiveness. This same principle applies to emotional states and life phases. While most people judge themselves for feeling sad, frustrated, or uncertain, seeing these emotions as problems to solve, Taoist wisdom recognizes them as natural movements in the larger flow of human experience. Just as winter is necessary for spring to have meaning, difficult emotions often clear space for new insights, relationships, or directions to emerge. Those who understand this don't waste energy fighting their feelings or pretending to be positive all the time. Instead, they learn to move through emotional weather with presence and curiosity, extracting the wisdom each state offers before it naturally shifts into something else. Here's something I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment where you stopped forcing something and suddenly found a better path opening up naturally? Maybe it was in a relationship, a work situation, or even a creative project where stepping back led to breakthrough. Share your story by starting your comment with, "My Wu Wei moment was," because I believe your experience could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. These stories of natural flow and effortless action remind us all that there's another way to live, and hearing from real people makes these ancient principles feel accessible and practical for our modern lives. The third principle that separates conscious living from autopilot existence is what Taoists call Te, often translated as virtue or power, but really meaning the authentic expression of your true nature. Most people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to be who they think they should be, wearing masks for different situations, constantly managing their image and reputation. This exhausting performance leaves very little energy for actually living, creating that hollow feeling that follows even their greatest achievements. But those who understand, they learn to align with their authentic self and express that consistently, regardless of external pressures or expectations. This alignment creates what appears to be effortless charisma and influence. When someone is genuinely being themselves, without pretense or manipulation, others can sense that authenticity and naturally feel drawn to it. Think about the people in your life who seem most magnetic and compelling. It's rarely the ones trying hardest to impress you, but rather those who seem completely comfortable in their own skin, expressing their thoughts and feelings with honest simplicity. This is the manifesting through a human being, and it's infinitely more powerful than any technique or strategy for gaining approval or influence. Living from the means making decisions based on what feels true for you rather than what looks good to others. It means speaking your honest thoughts even when they're unpopular, choosing relationships and opportunities that genuinely resonate rather than ones that seem advantageous, and trusting your inner guidance even when logic suggests otherwise. This can feel risky at first because you're stepping away from the external validation that most people use to feel secure. But what you discover is that authentic living creates its own kind of security, one based on self-knowledge and integrity rather than others' approval. The fourth awakening involves understanding what Taoists call ziran, usually translated as naturalness or spontaneity. This doesn't mean being impulsive or careless, but rather learning to respond to life from a place of presence and wisdom rather than habit and conditioning. Most people operate from unconscious patterns developed in childhood, reacting to current situations based on past experiences, often inappropriately. They're not really living in the present moment. They're running old programs that may have made sense at one time, but now limit their ability to see clearly and respond effectively. Someone who embodies Ziran has done the inner work to recognize these automatic patterns and create space between stimulus and response. When faced with criticism, instead of immediately defending or attacking back, they pause and consider what might be useful in the feedback. When opportunities arise, rather than jumping in based on past successes or fears, they assess what this particular situation requires. When relationships become difficult, they look beyond their own hurt to understand what might be happening for the other person. This capacity for fresh, appropriate response in each moment is what allows Taoist practitioners to navigate complexity with apparent ease. The development of Ziran requires cultivating what might be called witness consciousness, the ability to observe your own thoughts, emotions, and reactions without being completely identified with them. Most people are so merged with their mental and emotional activity that they can't see any alternative to whatever they're thinking or feeling in the moment. But meditation, reflection, and mindful living gradually create enough space for you to recognize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them. This recognition is profoundly liberating because it means you always have choice about how to respond, even in challenging circumstances. The fifth principle that awakens conscious living is Pu, often called the uncarved block, representing the state of natural simplicity and potential that exists before we layer on complications, expectations, and elaborate strategies for living. Children embody Pu naturally, approaching each experience with curiosity and wonder, not yet conditioned to believe that life has to be difficult or that they need to be anything other than themselves. As we grow older, society gradually carves away at this natural state, telling us what to want, how to think, what success looks like, until we barely remember who we were before all the programming began. Returning to Pu doesn't mean becoming childish or naive, but rather clearing away the accumulated mental clutter that obscures your natural wisdom and spontaneity. This involves questioning many of the beliefs you've never examined, recognizing how much of your wanting comes from external conditioning rather than genuine desire, and gradually simplifying your life to focus on what actually brings you joy and fulfillment. Most people are carrying tremendous amounts of psychological baggage, pursuing goals that aren't really theirs, maintaining relationships out of obligation, and living according to shoulds that have nothing to do with their authentic nature. The process of returning to Pu often involves letting go of elaborate plans and strategies for manipulating outcomes. While goal setting and planning certainly have their place, many people become so focused on controlling their future that they miss the opportunities and guidance available in the present moment. They're so busy trying to make something specific happen that they can't see the better possibilities that life is actually offering them. Someone living from Pu maintains clear intentions while remaining open to unexpected paths, trusting that their authentic desires will lead them toward their highest good if they stay present and responsive. The sixth awakening principle is understanding the Taoist approach to leadership and influence, which operates through what might be called invisible power. Most people think influence requires charisma, persuasion, or force, constantly trying to convince others to see things their way or follow their direction. But Taoist leadership works through example, presence, and creating conditions where others naturally want to move in positive directions. The most effective leaders throughout history have often been those who served something larger than themselves, inspiring others through their dedication and authenticity rather than their ability to manipulate or dominate. This principle applies whether you're leading a team at work, guiding your family, or simply trying to be a positive influence in your community. Instead of trying to control others' behavior or force outcomes, you focus on embodying the qualities you want to see in the world. Instead of criticizing what's wrong, you model what's right. Instead of demanding respect, you give it freely and earn it naturally. This approach often produces better results than more aggressive strategies, while creating much less stress and conflict in the process. The invisible power of Taoist influence also shows up in how you handle disagreements and difficult conversations. Rather than trying to win arguments or prove others wrong, you seek to understand different perspectives and find common ground where possible. You ask questions that help people examine their own assumptions rather than attacking those assumptions directly. You create space for others to save face when they want to change their position. This doesn't mean being weak or compromising your values, but rather being strategic about how you share those values in ways that others can actually receive and consider. The seventh principle that transforms autopilot living into conscious existence is cultivating what Taoists call Ming, often translated as destiny or fate, but really referring to your unique purpose and the specific way you're meant to contribute to the larger flow of life. Most people either reject the idea of destiny entirely, believing everything is random, or they think of it as a fixed path they need to discover and follow exactly. But the Taoist understanding is more nuanced, recognizing that each person has certain gifts, tendencies, and opportunities that point toward their optimal contribution, while still maintaining complete freedom about how they express and develop those potentials. Understanding your Ming requires deep self-knowledge and the willingness to be honest about both your strengths and limitations. It means recognizing patterns in what energizes you versus what drains you, what comes naturally versus what requires tremendous effort, what kind of impact you want to have versus what others think you should want. Many people spend decades trying to succeed at things they're not naturally suited for, wondering why achievement feels so difficult and hollow. But when you align with your Ming, work begins to feel more like play, challenges become interesting rather than overwhelming, and success feels meaningful rather than empty. Living according to Ming also involves trusting the timing of your life rather than trying to force things to happen on your preferred schedule. Most people create tremendous suffering by believing their dreams should have materialized by now, comparing their timeline to others, or pushing so hard for specific outcomes that they miss better opportunities along the way. But those who understand Taoist principles recognize that everything has its season. that preparation periods are just as important as manifestation periods, and that apparent delays often position you perfectly for future opportunities you can't yet see. The eighth awakening principle involves developing what might be called effortless discipline, the ability to maintain beneficial habits and practices without the constant willpower battles that exhaust most people. Traditional approaches to self-improvement rely heavily on forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do, creating internal conflict and eventual burnout. But Taoist wisdom suggests there's a more sustainable path that works with your nature rather than against it, making positive choices feel natural and enjoyable rather than forced. This begins with understanding that lasting change happens gradually, and that trying to transform everything at once usually leads to regression and discouragement. Instead of declaring dramatic life overhauls, you identify small adjustments that feel manageable and pleasant, building momentum slowly until new patterns become automatic. You might start by taking a few conscious breaths each morning rather than committing to hour-long meditation sessions. You might add one healthy meal to your week rather than completely changing your diet overnight. You might spend 10 minutes organizing rather than attacking your entire living space in one weekend. Effortless discipline also involves designing your environment to support the behaviors you want, rather than relying purely on willpower to override temptation. If you want to read more, you place books where you'll see them and remove distractions that compete for your attention. If you want to eat better, you stock your kitchen with nourishing foods and avoid bringing processed options home. If you want to exercise regularly, you choose activities you genuinely enjoy and find ways to make them convenient. This isn't being weak or taking shortcuts, it's being intelligent about human psychology and working with your natural tendencies rather than fighting them constantly. The ninth principle that distinguishes conscious living from autopilot existence is learning to dance with uncertainty rather than trying to eliminate it. Most people exhaust themselves trying to predict and control outcomes, seeking guarantees that don't exist, and creating anxiety when life doesn't unfold according to their plans. They postpone happiness and peace until they feel more secure, not realizing that complete security is an illusion, and that the attempt to achieve it often prevents them from enjoying the good things already present in their lives. Those who understand Taoist wisdom develop a different relationship with uncertainty, recognizing it as the space where creativity and growth occur. Instead of seeing the unknown as threatening, they begin to appreciate it as full of potential. Instead of trying to nail down every detail of their future, they cultivate flexibility and adaptability, trusting their ability to respond wisely to whatever emerges. This doesn't mean being careless or failing to plan, but rather holding plans lightly and remaining open to better possibilities that couldn't have been anticipated. Embracing uncertainty also involves accepting that you cannot control other people's choices, reactions, or feelings, no matter how much you care about them or how clear your intentions are. This recognition can initially feel scary, because so much of what people call security actually depends on others behaving predictably. But it's also profoundly liberating, because it frees you from the impossible burden of managing other people's experiences and allows you to focus your energy on what you actually can influence, which is your own thoughts, choices, and responses. The final awakening that completes the transformation from autopilot to conscious living is developing what Taoists call sage mind, a state of awareness that can hold paradox, complexity, and multiple perspectives simultaneously without needing to resolve everything into simple answers. Most people's thinking is binary, constantly categorizing experiences as good or bad, right or wrong, success or failure. This creates tremendous internal conflict because life rarely fits into neat categories, and the attempt to force it into them often causes more problems than the original situations. Sage mind recognizes that most situations contain elements of both benefit and challenge, that apparent failures often set up future successes, that what seems like bad news sometimes carries hidden gifts. This doesn't mean being passive or accepting harmful situations, but rather responding from a place of wisdom that can see the larger patterns and possibilities rather than getting trapped in immediate emotional reactions. Someone operating from sage mind might feel disappointed by a setback while simultaneously recognizing new opportunities it creates, or experience grief at a loss while appreciating the love that made the loss meaningful. This expanded awareness also allows for what might be called skillful action, responses that address immediate needs while considering long-term consequences, solutions that honor everyone's dignity while still protecting important boundaries, communications that express truth while maintaining connection where possible. Sage mind doesn't always know the right answer immediately, but it has the patience to sit with complexity until appropriate responses emerge naturally. These 10 principles work together to create a completely different way of experiencing life, one where you're actively participating in each moment rather than sleepwalking through predetermined patterns. When you learn to flow with circumstances rather than constantly fighting them, honor your natural rhythms instead of forcing artificial ones, express your authentic self rather than performing for others, respond freshly to each situation rather than reacting from past conditioning, embrace your natural simplicity instead of complicating everything, lead through example rather than manipulation, align with your unique purpose instead of following others' expectations, maintain beneficial habits without constant struggle, dance with uncertainty rather than trying to eliminate it, and hold complexity with wisdom rather than demanding simple answers, you discover that life becomes significantly more enjoyable and meaningful. The beautiful thing about Taoist wisdom is that it doesn't require you to believe anything or adopt any particular lifestyle. These principles work because they align with how life actually operates, not because they represent one philosophical tradition among many. You can test them in small ways and see for yourself whether they create more ease and effectiveness in your daily experience. You might try pausing before reacting to criticism to see if a more skillful response emerges. You could experiment with honoring your natural energy rhythms rather than forcing productivity. You might practice expressing your authentic thoughts in low-stakes situations to build confidence for more important conversations. What you'll likely discover is that these small experiments create positive feedback loops that naturally encourage you to explore deeper applications. As you experience the relief of not fighting against reality, the joy of authentic self-expression, and the effectiveness of working with natural flows rather than against them, you'll find yourself wanting to understand and embody these principles more fully. This isn't about perfection or becoming some idealized version of yourself, but rather about gradually waking up to the wisdom and aliveness that's already present within you, just waiting for the space and permission to emerge. If you found value in this exploration of what separates conscious living from autopilot existence, I invite you to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. This community is growing around the shared understanding that ancient wisdom traditions like Taoism contain practical keys for navigating modern life with more grace and authenticity. By subscribing, you're not just getting access to regular content about philosophy and personal growth. You're joining a conversation about how to live more consciously in a world that often encourages the opposite. You're supporting the creation of content that prioritizes depth over superficiality, wisdom over quick fixes, and authentic transformation over temporary motivation. Most importantly, you're taking a concrete step toward the kind of life these teachings make possible, one where you're fully awake to the beauty and potential of each moment, rather than moving through your days on autopilot. The path from unconscious living to conscious existence isn't always easy, but it's infinitely more rewarding than any alternative, and having a community of fellow travelers makes the journey both more enjoyable and more sustainable.